We are in the portal and I have a resource group ready, so I'm going to use this Scalability RG. Now, in order to create a virtual machine scale set, type in virtual machine scale set or VMSS in the search column, and you will get a new service which is different than virtual machines. Most of the options look similar to creating virtual machines. However, we have 3 or 4 different options wherein we need to be very careful. So choose the resource group and give a name. I'm going to choose East US. Now, when the scalability happens, the new images which are getting created can be spreaded across different availability zone so that we will get both scalability and high availability. So that is a wonderful option. So here I'm going to choose none, or you can choose all 3 availability zones wherein you can spread all these images to. I'll choose Windows 2012 R2. Now, this is one point from my practical experience. Not every SKU works well with virtual machine scale set. So if you're trying the lab, do it with D2SV3. Give the username and password and move on to the next page wherein we are not going to make any change here. But here is the most important page and the first important of all. We need to edit some options before choosing the default NIC. So click on this edit option. As usual, we need to allow the internet traffic as well as the remote desktop 80, 443 and 3389 and enable the public IP address and click on OK. Choose that VM once the edit is done, and it is mandatory to use the load balancer because even if we are creating one virtual machine scale set image, it has to be under a load balancer. Keep the load balancer options default and move on to scaling. This is the most important page of all. Here, I'm going to start with one instance count. And do you remember we have seen 2 different scaling policy? One is manual and custom. If you do not remember this, just go back to the previous lecture and see all the scalability option. I'm going to choose the custom option. And all these are important. Now watch carefully. I'm going to start with one VM instance, and as per our discussion, 4 is the maximum budget for me. Well, you can go up to 1000 here, but I'm not ready to pay for my 5th virtual machine, either for business purpose or for budget purpose. If the CPU is beyond 65 percentage, for continuous 5 minutes, then increase the VM instance by 1. I repeat, when the CPU percentage hits 65 and more, the load balancer watches it for 5 minutes. Well, 5 is the minimal. You cannot change it to anything less than that. 60 is the maximum, which is 1 hour, but it doesn't make any sense. So keep it 5. If the load balancer is sensing 65% and above for more than 5 minutes, then increase the count by 1. If it is less than 25%, decrease the count by 1. You can change here also about the CPU percentage. Now keep the other options default. Here I'm turning the boot diagnostics off. If you would like to know all these options, just move your cursor here and it will give you the description of all the options. I'm keeping all the options as default and I'm going to create this virtual machine scale set. And this creation is going to take at least 5 minutes time because it comes with a load balancer, virtual machine scale set and other dependencies. So I'm going to pause the video for 5 minutes. Once we resume, we will click on the resource group and we will see what are all these extra components. The way we are going to log in to virtual machine scale set is slightly different than our previous labs. We have the public IP of our first instance, so let's do RDP to that, but we need a port number also. Where can I find the port number? We need the load balancer's port number. So click on the inbound naturals. We have 50,001. I'm going to use that port number to log in. So the public IP address of the load balancer colon and the port number of the load balancer, which is 50,001. Type in the username and password. We are inside the operating system. Here we are going to do a small experiment. There is a wonderful tool by Microsoft which is called cpustress.exe. CPU stress which ends with one S, not two S. We are going to navigate to that particular tool and give artificial stress to the CPU, and we will go back to our portal and see if we are getting new instance. Since we are going to browse through internet, I'm going to turn off the IE security so that I can have a seamless browsing. Type in CPU stress.exe. The first one, which is docs.microsoft.com, download. I'll use the 64-bit. Just double click this and run it, and that's how we run this particular tool. Now this is the page that you get. We clearly see that everything is low and normal. Now we are artificially going to increase the load. Keep the activity level to maximum for all the cores of CPU. And I'm also going to change the priority level of all to maximum. Now we need to give this at least 5 minutes because that is the rule that we have given to load balancer. Let's go to the portal and choose virtual machine scale set and go to instance. Here you can see that we have only one instance, all normal, and after 5 minutes we will see how the behavior is. Until then you can watch the CPU status here. Now after some time, if I come back to the overview page of this virtual machine scale set, I see that the CPU percentage is beyond 50, almost going to be 60 now. Okay, after a few more minutes, my CPU utilization is to the maximum here. So let me click on instances, and I can already see that in order to give me a second instance, Microsoft is over provisioning two more images. Whichever comes first will be given as a second image. And my virtual machine is completely hung. I'm not able to click anything. Finally, after 20 minutes, I get all my four virtual machines running. But do you see the number 1, 2, 3, and 7? That's because of over provisioning also. Now let's see the pros and cons of virtual machine scale set. What are the pros? Of course, true to the name, it is the scalability. And I also have high availability by moving the scalability option to availability zone, inbuilt availability zone. So with this, I get my high availability of 99.99 percentage. Now, when it comes to cons, what is the first thing which comes to your mind? Time. In order to come to a conclusion of CPU utilization percentage, the load balancer is taking 5 minutes. So 5 minutes for load balancer, and in order to create the second VM, another 5 minutes. Together 10 minutes for one instance. If I start from one instance, in order to move from 1 to 2, it takes 10 minutes. In this fast world wherein we are speaking about milliseconds and microseconds of latency, can we speak? Can we afford to speak in minutes? Definitely no. So here is when most of the people go for Kubernetes. So virtual machine scale set is not the ideal solution for everybody, but there are many customers who are still using virtual machine scale set, especially as their front end web server. If you see an n-tier architecture, wherein n is the number, it can be anything. Let's take a very basic three-tier architecture, wherein the first tier is your web tier, and then your application tier, and then finally the database. most of the customers use virtual machine scale set here in their web tier, wherein the minimum instance count that I have seen personally is 100 and the maximum is 1000. That's the first point, and instead of going for 75% as the maximum CPU utilization, they keep 45% as the max and less than 25% as the minimum. And 5 minutes is the basic time that we cannot change. With this, to an extent, we can increase the performance, but still, virtual machine scale sets comes with latency, which is a major disadvantage. Back in 2015 and 16 period, virtual machine scale set was really very hot. The last few years, it's the era of Kubernetes. If you see Azure Kubernetes service, the base component of Azure Kubernetes service is nothing but virtual machine scale set. So it is really very important for us to understand how VMSS works. The only difference is the scalability takes 10 minutes here. In AKS, it is 10 seconds. So what makes a virtual machine scale set get converted to an AKS? Wait for the last lecture. Now, with this, we are ending the day one lecture of AZ104. We will move on to storage and networking and many other interesting topics. Make sure you practice all the labs.